welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peters, and now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We saw quite a bit of news in college basketball on Tuesday. For those of you that think that college basketball is dead here in August, boy, are you being proven wrong this offseason, as we saw Amarri Monroe head on over to Syracuse. David Mirkovic, who is one of the top players for Illinois last season, he underwent surgery. We do not know how long he is going to be out. And additionally, we've got more with regards to this court ruling with the NCAA from Colorado, and the NCAA trying to be suspending coaches for half the season for ghost transfers. So we've got a lot to dive in on there. We'll talk more about these court cases, more of the legalities, some of the players that are on the market. It's segment number 2 with our good friend Rocco Miller, who does great work over at Bracketeer.org. And trust me, I do need to bring on a lot of guests to help out with this, because I went to college over at UW-Oshkosh for radio, TV, film. I did not go for all the legalities, court cases, what have you. I wanted to avoid math and science classes and any sort of law and anything like that. I just wanted to talk about sports. So we're going to be trying to decipher this, and Rocco Miller, he does a little bit of a better job than myself of deciphering the legalities of this. We're going to chat with him about that and just talk about some of the teams that he's feeling a little bit more bullish/bearish on with everything that we've been seeing over the last few weeks. If you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, by the way, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways via fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. So, as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way, that is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Again, beg if you, plead if you, please do send in these Twitter/X questions. So that way I know exactly what you guys want to be hearing here in the off season. And with regards to the NCAA's memo, we'll start with this first. It is a case where they are trying to make sure that roster limits and revenue share cap under the House remain in effect, and there is overwhelming support apparently to penalize schools for the ghost transfers for some of these guys that did not enter into the transfer portal in the specific window, which that's going to be the basis of the That's going to be a lot of the basis of the California court case. That's the one that's involving Donovan Dent, Jackson Kaler, all those guys. So we'll see what we get in the coming days. Might at this point be coming hours with regards to that one as well, because if they rule that these guys are able to enter in the transfer portal, I don't think that the NCAA is going to have any sort of a leg to stand on whatsoever. And as we know with the NCAA, they are the Washington Generals of the court system. I coined that on this podcast, and I really do think that it's true, but there is a little bit of momentum to have the head coaches suspended for 50% of the season if you do get these air quotes here, ghost transfers, what have you. So there's that aspect of things. We did see one big-time transfer. That would be with Syracuse, getting Amarri Monroe. He was over at Quinnipiac last year. 2 years ago, he really had his heyday, in my opinion. Last year was still a very solid year from him. Don't get me wrong, 15.5 points, 8.5 boards, 2.2 assists per contest, and he was able to pop it a little bit from 3, albeit he only shot about 27.5% from 3, but as that versatility, 2 years ago was really that big year from 2.3 steals, 18 points, 9 rebounds per game, but this helps out a Syracuse team that obviously is in season number 1 under Jerry McNamara. For Syracuse, they did lose quite a few guys in the offseason like Donnie Freeman and company. They kept Kion Anthony, that would be the son of Carmelo Anthony. Gavin Doty, he's a guy that followed over from Siena. You've got Gawari Duel, so it's a very interesting roster. Tasman Guderick, he comes over from Siena as well. I felt like they needed a little bit more pop, and I'm still wondering where the three-point shooting is really going to be coming from for this team, but they do have Sadiq White Jr. on the roster. They did a nice job in terms of their recruiting as well, so this is going to be a really interesting team, and I think that this is going to be impactful for them, but not as impactful as this. David Mirkovic, he was last season over at Illinois, and he was absolutely tremendous for them. And personally, with everything that we saw over at Michigan the last few weeks, losing Dusty May, and additionally, along with losing Dusty May, LJ Kaysen as well, not necessarily the biggest loss in the world, but still a loss for them. I did have to downgrade them from my projector of finish from number 1, and I replaced them with Illinois, but we have to see how long he's going to be out. For Mirkovic, 37.5% three-point shooter at 6'9". He was given the team 13 points, 8 rebounds per game. Maybe he didn't average as much as, say, a Andrei Stojakovic, but was really able to do a nice job in terms of stretching the floor. You got the Ivisic brothers who are going to be back, which is going to be big, and it's still an Illinois team that's going to be locked and loaded. Even without Mirkovic, I do think that they're going to be a top 3 team within the conference, but you just see what's coming with Maryland. I think that they're going to be in for a really nice season. The California schools, UCLA, USC, I think that's sort of a put up or shut up year for them as well. So I do think that this is just a very interesting landscape in the Big Ten in general for Mirkovic. We're going to see how long he's out because he might not miss any time whatsoever. But when the school is posting out on social media, hey, this guy had surgery, that's something that you do have to be concerned about when that is happening in early August. Now, that said, he's going to have a few months to be able to recover, so that's going to be able to help them out. But we need to see the just sort of ripple effect of this and just how serious that surgery is. So we're going to be following up on that certainly in the coming days and coming weeks because it's still unclear the timetable for a return for Mirkovic. But what is having a great timetable is in a few minutes you're going to be hearing from our good friend Rocco Miller. He does absolutely amazing work over at Bracketeer.org, and that does come up on the flip side of your Untitled Chapter with myself, Greg Peterson, and now a part of the Decent Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Cuscasips with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It's always a pleasure to be joined by this man as we've got Rocco Miller aboard. He does such great work over at Bracketeer.org, looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. He's doing such a great job with regards to scheduling. That's his main beat this time of year, and typically that's what we're all looking at this time of year. We're looking at scheduling, way too early, top 25s, what have you, but this offseason is taking a little bit of a turn out there in the court system, and he's doing a great job of being able to break that down and so much more. He's also at Basket Under Review. He's also at the Field of 68. This man does like 57 jobs, and he does them all so well. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at his first and last name, Rocco Miller, the number 8 altogether. And Rocco, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate the kind words, Greg. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and well, I'm doing better than the NCAA is in the court system because I always say it on the podcast. It feels like they're the Washington Generals of that. And just what have you made over the last few weeks? Because we saw the court ruling by Judge Sweeney out there in Colorado, and then he made a few adjustments to it, making sure that was for the guys from the class of 2022 and the stipulation that you needed to be in the transfer portal. Now we're seeing even more coming out with the NCAA on Tuesday, and it's just a big giant ball of wax, and it feels like everything is confusing, and even those that know the sport the best have no idea what the heck is going on.
Yeah, I'll do my best to dissect it from my point of view.
That's all of us.
That's right. Yeah, it is chaotic, just, hey, what kind of rules are we playing by? And it's clearly impacting the who's who, if not every other major sport, especially basketball and beyond during the academic calendar. I know baseball and softball, for example, to a lesser degree, are hyper-focused on some of these rulings as well, and other sports, and women's basketball, of course, too. So it's got far-reaching impacts. We have soccer starting exhibition games, I think, this weekend, right? So NCAA sports will be off and rolling by this time next week. I think there's regular season soccer games and volleyball games in the next 2 weeks. So everybody is pins and needles for different reasons. Now, here in men's basketball, our main focus, I think what it comes down to is the class of 2022, as you mentioned. How many of these traditional, straight out of high school, played 4 years, and would be granted a fifth year during a traditional 5-and-5 model, which we will for sure have starting next season. What was granted to probably the last five or so classes before this due to COVID, we called it the COVID rule all those years. How many of those guys are actually worth going out of your way to make sure has a roster spot? I think personally that number is probably less than 100, but let's just say there's 100 of them. I think once you get past the hierarchy in college basketball with money, obviously the Power Five has plenty of resources. If the program and the player truly want to go all in on this and go make this happen, they will. We saw that early on this week with Godfrey, taking advantage, getting the ruling that he needed, and he's already signed into Arizona. We saw Cincinnati's already been listing MJ Collins on their roster. There's some other, onesie twosies. I think Elwin from Louisville has now committed per Joe Tipton today to Oregon. So there are already some examples of that coming to fruition. Now, some of these teams already had the open spot. We haven't really seen full on chaos quite yet, which we might. But I do think the chaos may be a little more digestible than I think we're led to believe, based on the fact that so many of these roster spots are full. It's not going to be an easy decision for a coach to kick a kid off, to create a new spot, to go either raise money or use money that was supposed to go somewhere else on another player. A lot of these big name guys, whether it's Kylan Boswell, Richie Saunders, Otega Owe, Emmanuel Sharp, Seth Trimble, some of these dream names, they're not going to play for anything less than a high number, right? The ability to make all three things match. The player motivated to play college basketball one more year has to take a certain amount of money. The coach motivated to offer the player, go through all these hoops probably to make it happen. That is going to happen in certain places, but in how much quantity, I'm not so sold that it will be a big quantity. And then lastly, of course, they have to come to terms on the amount. Let's say Columbia Lions need a point guard, right? Like, they've got a nice roster right now, but if a team like Columbia wants a point guard, I don't think they're going to have enough to offer one of these bigger names. Like, do you think Braden Smith, who set the assist record at Purdue, is suddenly going to be the Columbia point guard? I don't think so either. So all these, we do have a lot of teams, we do have a lot of leagues, but once you start to narrow it down team by team, roster by roster, level by level, you start to realize, okay, how much of this is truly going to get shooken up? And I put that number over under would probably be 100 for me.
Yep, and I do think that that's such a great point by you. We've seen one or two moves as well. I think that CJ Jones already signed on with Pacific, which if that's the case, that's a great move for Pacific. And I know
they've got some money now. They've got some money.
Yeah, they do. And I believe that Malik Moore was one of those guys that was also on the move as well to Illinois State. So love that for Illinois State. So love to see those mid-major teams going for it. And I did put Illinois State as my number one team on my projector of finish for the Missouri Valley. So I'm bullish on them, just like I'm always bullish on Rocco Miller joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And when it comes to the California case, I think that one's the most interesting because that involves Donovan Dent, who I think that his, shall we say, situation is the one that's been the most high profile because he's right now in the transfer portal with a do not contact tag. You have to figure that if he does get eligibility, he is going to go to Gonzaga, but he did not enter the transfer portal before because he went into retirement. How do you take a look at what we might get in the California case? Because that is going to be huge for these guys like Jackson Kaler, Braden Carrington. There's a lot of big names in that case, and I think a lot is going to be hinging upon what happens here in the next few days and perhaps even next few hours with that one.
Yeah, good point. I think the California case, as well as the Tennessee case, which had a list of 19 players, I think those are in very favorable positions from what we know right this moment for the player. And I would just say in general, if I had to put my gut feeling on kind of all the cases, if a player and a program really want to make it work, I think they're going to be able to make it work. I think one of the things that got reminded this week on social media was that the NCAA is threatening to suspend a coach half the season if a player doesn't properly enter the portal. And the portal technically closed in April. So they're calling those ghost transfers if you don't officially enter your name into the portal. And obviously anybody in the California case, anybody in any of these late cases, California, Tennessee, Colorado, what have you, they would not have properly entered the portal. I think the NCAA at some point, some level in the very near future will have to do some sort of proper portal window. Obviously, guys like Donovan Dent, if Donovan Dent is in fact going to Gonzaga, they probably know where they're going. There's probably only one or two schools for guys like Sky Clark or Jackson Kohler or Jordan Pope, Aiden Mahaney, etc., that will be able to offer the kind of money. You have to remember, the better the player, the more professional options they have, right? You have to imagine Donovan Dent better get enough from Gonzaga to make more than he would playing in like Greece or Slovenia, right? I think that's a big part of the equation from the player side that the college basketball community maybe doesn't think about as much because there is a whole world of professional options. But once you are in big time college basketball, I think we all know that's the second highest paying league in the world if you're the right caliber. It's all just a balancing act. Whereas there also might be some guys like Ewing is a good example, going from Louisville to Oregon, pretty much a role player, wants another year of college basketball, mainly to prove himself for professional opportunities. Oregon probably got him for next to nothing, and they like the fact that he can play a certain role, and that's a win-win for both teams where there might not be a lot of money exchanged, right? So you'll see some of those as well, I think, as we go forward.
Yep, I think so as well. And I mentioned it. Some of these mid-major teams like Pacific and Illinois State are getting involved as well. And how much do you think that it's all about just that roster spot being open? Because there's a lot of people are like, oh, everyone should be throwing a whole bunch of NIL money at Braden Smith, what have you. Well, Purdue probably doesn't have that roster spot open and the NIL for a guy like a Braden Smith. You mentioned it with the likes of Seth Trimble, what have you. And some of these teams that do have the opportunity available are going to be some of these mid-major teams.
Yeah, I still can't see some of those huge names like the ones you just mentioned going to a mid-major. It just doesn't make sense financially. Them going to Europe or even into the G League, they'll be able to earn more and get to the NBA a little quicker as well. So Terrace Reed Jr., right? He was a guy they got actually drafted, and same with Zuby Ejiofor. Technically they could challenge this if they really felt like it. That's where LSU comes into play with their available spots, and who knows what kind of slush fund they've got set aside to shake things up. And obviously they love challenging the system, but they're more of a unicorn than the everyday team. I do think it's really interesting. Illinois State and Pacific are two really good examples of programs that are really, really eager to be good in men's basketball. Illinois State did it 2 years in a row to bring Kinzinger and Chase Walker back, two guys who are probably Power 5 players, but they put all their eggs in those two baskets. Last year, they did win 12 conference games, but lost badly in the opening Arch Madness game. So there is a lot of pressure on Illinois State to not only get past
non-conference for them too.
Yeah, it is. And they got another big one just got scheduled. I'll share it here, exclusive. They're going to go to St. Mary's this year. I'm still confirming the date. That's on top of anything else you caught wind of. I know they'll play Tulsa and Santa Clara in their Palm Springs tournament, and they have a road game at Purdue. And so they'll have plenty of opportunities to move the needle at non-conference. Even just winning one of those types of games is a big deal for a school like that. And then Pacific, I've worked with them very closely. They'll play at least 7 true road games this year. Really a lot of opportunities to move the needle with a great road record if they can do it. They'll go to Stanford this year, which, Kyle Smith is obviously a genius and won't be as easy. Not an overwhelming talented team either. So a chance to win there. Pacific will also go to Bradley this year. They're going to go to Utah State right before league play. That will be a massive opportunity. They'll go to Nevada, who's supposed to have a great team. So those are 4 really challenging road games for the Tigers, and then some manageable road games as well with New Mexico State, Long Beach State, Sac State. At the end of the day, that could be a really interesting resume. Player-wise, they've probably tripled their budget since Dave Smart got the gig. So I'm really excited about where the program's going. They have an athletic director that came from Dayton originally. He is 100% all in on college basketball success. So it's just been really refreshing to see. And I hope they can keep that thing going for a couple more years because we saw a lot of progress in the analytics last year. I think Pacific finished like 110 in KenPom, despite being under 500. That just shows how close they were to really turning the page. Obviously, they nearly had Gonzaga beat on the road, which would have been a historic win. This coming year, I could easily see them getting 3rd place in the WCC or be in the top 3.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I do think that they're going to be able to have a lot of success in the new look WCC because no longer do we have Gonzaga. They're out there in the Pac-12. So I think that there's a lot of legroom for them moving forward as Rocco Miller does such great work over at Bracketeer.org. Joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Rocco, there's a lot to parse through right now, and we're doing our best with the legalities. I don't know if you got any sort of degree with regards to like law or something like that. I went to college for radio, TV, film because I wanted to do media and I didn't want to do like math and science or anything like that. So I am about as useful as a poopy flavored lollipop when it comes to these cases. But that said, just looking at the nooks and crannies of what we've gotten over the last few weeks, because we've seen a lot of player movement, even with just going back to Michigan, that coaching surge. I mean, we talked about Brown last time you were on. I like the hire of Eric Revenue. List goes on and on. But are there just a few teams right now that you're feeling a little bit different about with what we've seen over the last few weeks? Because we've seen unprecedented roster movement for this time of year.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything's unprecedented because every year we feel like we're getting closer to some sort of structure we can depend on. Every year the structure keeps changing in one way or another. And this year, maybe more times than often throughout the offseason. There was a lot of discussion the last 2 years to get rid of that March portal window because teams are still playing and guys are committing. Like, what are we doing here? So they finally got that cleaned up this year. We opened the portal at midnight of the national title. Now, there was a lot of pushback from Michigan and UConn because Michigan couldn't celebrate their championship. They were already working on getting players. And I think a part of that moment at some level helped push Dusty May out of the sport, right? And really consider taking the NBA job. You know, there's still more to clean up with that. Like maybe we push it back another week next year, or maybe we wait at least a couple days after the national title game. So we'll see how that shakes out. And now, you know, the NCAA, I just think from their standpoint, the timing of announcing this 5-5 finally getting passed, which we kind of all sensed, you know, just talking to a lot of the industry folks at the different levels of Division I, we kind of all sensed that would happen. Why couldn't they just announce that like before the season was over, or even, you know, like last December or January? Because if they would have, you can kind of retrace those steps now, and you would find that all these challenges from the class of 2022 would have got a head start, right? We would have gotten through some of those initial court cases. Maybe even the NCAA themselves could have just said, okay, we will include the class of 2022. Why should we waste all these lawyer hours? But they shot themselves in the foot by waiting as long as they did. And I understand it applies to more than basketball. It applies to, like I said earlier, baseball, softball, volleyball, soccer, etc. But man, that's just like so many things because men's basketball is right in the middle of the academic year. Due to all this, it's really created a chaotic national offseason. However, there are leagues, there are teams, maybe at least one team in each league that kind of stayed in their lane and did their own thing, and they're not going to worry about the distractions. They're going to focus on what they got, and maybe they'll be better off for that.
Yep, I think so as well. And I think that it's just going to be such an interesting landscape because I think the teams that are really going to benefit the most are the teams that maybe got a little bit of a head start. I talked about this, I believe, the last time you were on, a team like a Xavier with Philip Borovichinen, having him stay on campus, with a Cincinnati, having MJ Collins still already in the mix. I think that these teams that they got a little bit of a head start, they sense what was coming with the 5-5 rule. They're going to be the ultimate winners rather than these teams that maybe try to sign a guy in like August, September, because that chemistry is not going to be there for them like it is going to be for a Cincinnati and a Xavier.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see. I mean, I think this Big East situation is very interesting, like Xavier, you said, and even DePaul. Providence, for sure. I mean, they have the excitement and the upside because of the seasoning and because the rev share thing, right? Like rev share last year would have kicked in around July. But by then, all the funds were allocated at the Power 5 level to build the rosters and move forward. So I don't think we really felt it from the Big East. And of course, the Big East only had a trio of good teams last year. I think this year we should start to feel more of it, like tons of upside at those teams: Marquette, Xavier, DePaul, Providence, and Xavier. So I think you throw St. John's, of course, Creighton, of course, you know, they should have a bounce back. I like Allen Huss a lot. Of course, UConn. You know, we could see upwards of 8 bids from the Big East. I'm really curious to see what that bounce back looks like. You know, they all have adequate opportunities in non-conference. How the Big East performs in the non-conference will go a long, long ways, because we saw how it goes the last couple of years, where if they they just don't quite get those non-conference wins. They'll be boxed in for, a much smaller ceiling for the total bids for the conference. Obviously, this is a league that could really capitalize on those extra 7 spots created by the field of 76.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I think that they could be the biggest beneficiaries of that. Hopefully, one of those bids goes to the Atlantic 10, maybe the Missouri Valley Conference as well. Might be a little bit of a pipe dream with the way that sometimes it's structured, but you know what? One can dream, and one can dream of clarity in the NCAA. Might not be coming anytime soon, but in the meantime, we've got you to help us out, Rocco, because you're doing a great job of making sense of everything that is going on. You're doing a great job in terms of pumping out all these schedules as well. I've been commenting on some of the teams that have been scheduling very hard and giving a little bit of flack to my home state of Wisconsin, who decided to go for the 6 cupcakes for 5 price. So that was interesting to say the least. You're doing a great job on so many different fronts. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
I appreciate it, brother.
You can follow me at Rocco Miller 8 on X/Twitter, of course, and then same handle on Blue Sky. Don't do a ton over there, but hey, try to keep it real for those guys that are on there more often. My website, bracketeer.org, continue to crank out schedule updates. Fans are continuing to find games that are not announced to other places, so that's the beauty of the site. We just had Illinois, Western Kentucky announced here earlier. Some folks may have seen the USC Wichita State matchup only on bracketeer.org first. A lot of those, once you continue to refresh that Big 12, SEC, and Big 10 page. ACC should be done this week, and then I think you'll see through the rest of August, several leagues will come after. The scheduling process, due to the late portal and this 5-5 chaos, if you can imagine, it has delayed us to the point where there are still a lot of games to get done. The scheduling work never ends, really. And I've still got to try to move forward to 2027 scheduling, because once we hit October, literally nobody in the business is going to care too much about 2027. We focused on winning games. So still a lot of scheduling work to do between now and October. It's a grind every day. That's why, unfortunately, Greg, sorry, I show up a few minutes late to our calls, but we should get back into a good routine once we get closer to tip-off.
It is all good. Hey, I've got baseball work to do as well, because I am not someone that knows anything about these court cases. I leave that to the professionals. And Rocco, he is a pro's pro when it comes to scheduling, when it comes to deciphering this game of college basketball, and so much more. That's why we appreciate him so much on this podcast. A big thanks to Rocco for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one or two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please send these into the timeline. And the other way, that is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Going to be doing some more conference previews here within the next few weeks, as I think we're going to do the Ohio Valley Conference ahead of the NEC. We'll get our guy Ryan Peters at some point on for the NEC, the OVC. Planning on doing that over the weekend. I've been taking it a little bit slower with conference previews here over the last few weeks because, man, we have got a lot that's going on with these court cases, a lot of just adjusting rosters, what have you. So I've been very much going full bore into this, but have no fear, I'm still taking a look at all these conferences, getting you guys set for what I hope to be the greatest college basketball season of all time. So appreciate you tuning in today, and I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much.